Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another night of Kopi Time Crypto Night. Tonight we have a very special guest, Stephen Chia. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi everyone, how is everyone doing?
Good, good. Okay, we're just doing a quick mic check, quick sound test. Please comment below if our sounds are coming across okay. Please let us know. Okay, Stephen, you want to do a quick sound check?
Yeah, everything. Good evening, everyone. Good to be on again. My second time on ET, right?
Yes, yes, second time, and many more to come.
Always fun to have your company for the Thursday crypto night.
Yes, yes, and I know Steven's when Steven's not on the show, he's watching the show, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So welcome, Steven. Okay, so for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Okay, we're just doing quick sound check, make sure everything's okay. Um, uh, Please like, subscribe. Tell your friends, tag your friends, get them to come on and watch us. Tonight's gonna be a bit cheeky and a bit fun. Steven and I are gonna have a bit of fun tonight to talk about the myths of Bitcoin. Um, I see people joining. Welcome, Genevia. Welcome, Banfu. Welcome. Welcome, Gumming. Sushan. Welcome. And Loy Tai. Okay. And Michelle. Welcome. Okay. So everyone that's joining us, cool. Okay. We're getting some loud and clear. Okay. So Stephen, for those who have not seen you on the show before, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself?
Well, actually, today I just came back from from of all places, somewhere nearby in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur Baru. So I spent the past 2 days at a management retreat, doing coaching and training for a small company called Craftivity, and basically to help them because after the MCO happened, a lot of companies began to realize that maybe there are certain parts of the company that they need to improve or need to plan a little bit better, just in case we have maybe, God forbid, MCO2, right? So I've been doing management and strategy planning training for some of these companies. So today I had the 2 days, I had a beautiful time in Kuala Lumpur Baru. And apparently there's an Airbnb place on a hill that's really beautiful. And we spent 2 days planning, doing management training for this company to chart their direction. So check them out. Craftivity is a very innovative young company, and they are involved in making products that you want to learn how to do stuff. For example, soap making, make your own essential oils, even make your own aroma, maybe aloe sanitizer. So their website is Craftivity, CARFTIVIT. All right, TI, sorry, VITI. So that's my day job. My night job is actually looking at crypto, investing in crypto, and lately a little bit less Bitcoin, more in the altcoins, which is the other coins, which I believe some of them have a lot of potential as projects. So that's what I've been working on. Last year, I just stepped off a blockchain foundation. I spent 2.5 years on the NEM Foundation, and I was doing that for 2.5 years and built up their regional presence in Southeast Asia. And I just stepped off from their foundation, and I have been doing a little bit of everything and training for the past 1 year.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So essentially, Stephen's on the show because Stephen is a bit of a veteran in the crypto space, right? So as Stephen mentioned, he used to be the regional director for the NEM Foundation. So it was a big job. In fact, I met Stephen a few years ago, right? And yeah, so Steven's been around the block in the crypto space, right? And that's why he's on the show, and he knows, he knows the scene, he knows the people pretty well. And so tonight, we've got an interesting show. So I just want to welcome those who are coming in right now. So hi guys, hi Kian Lang, and hi Alex, hi everyone else who's starting to roll in. So okay, I'm gonna jump to it, and let me share my screen, and we can go straight into it. So okay, here we go. Everyone can see this. Oops. Okay, I always want to present. All right, there we go. Okay, so tonight we're going to be Mythbusters, and we're going to be busting some myths about Bitcoin. This came about because I had a pretty interesting conversation. Look, I'm sure everyone is part of many WhatsApp groups, right? And over the MCO, you probably got added to even more WhatsApp groups. And talking about Bitcoin is obviously one of my passions and one of Stephen's passion. I'm pretty sure. Well, not just Bitcoin, but crypto, right? But Bitcoin being the oldest, so it being the most famous and most talked about, I guess. So tonight we're gonna. So anyway, so the story is I was part of this Bitcoin group, and you have a lot of questions that are coming. But some of these questions are fine, but some people take a stance. Oh, good evening, Daniel. Some people take a stance and they kind of just shut off their mind and they're like, nope, this is my stance. No Bitcoin, right? So and they come up with a lot of very interesting statements. So tonight I've compiled a list of statements, and me and Stephen are just gonna go through those statements, and we're gonna give our comments about them, and maybe provide a little bit of data to support our where we stand on it. Okay, so before we proceed, this is the disclaimer. This is for informational purposes only. This is not financial advice. Tonight's session is not financial advice. It never is financial advice, right? It's for informational purpose only. And so do not go out and buy Bitcoin or any other crypto after watching this show, right? Should you want to do so, go and consult a professional, financial professional before doing so. Okay. So moving on, right? So I think I mentioned this on one of the shows before. There is actually, if you Google for Bitcoin obituary, Bitcoin has been declared dead many times. From year 2009 up till now, and it continues to be written about and declared dead many times. So it's quite. Oh, sorry, it's like 381 times to be on their website if you find it, right. So some of the biggest myths, right? Bitcoin is used for illegal activities. Why would I want Bitcoin when I have cash? Bitcoin is too volatile. Shares are better than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a get-rich-quick scam. Right? These are quite common, right? Right, Stephen?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, this is probably the top of the list.
Yeah. So we compiled it, and so let's talk about the first one. Stephen, I'll let you start. Bitcoin is used for illegal activities. What do you say to that, Stephen?
Well, let's say if I'm a rice smuggler, right, from Indochina, and during MCO, it's pretty good business. We smuggle rice. Everybody's at home. Everybody's cooking, so they need a lot of rice, right? So imagine if I'm trying to smuggle rice and I needs to get paid, right? So let's say, Andrew, you are my rice buyer in Malaysia, and I'm in Cambodia. And every time I ship you tons of rice and container full of rice, and we get it through the system, you have to pay me, right? So if I use conventional methods, which would be maybe perhaps I use cash, we hide it in oil drums and you ship it to me in Kelantan, right? Or I can use maybe some form of money exchange, right? But why would I want to use Bitcoin, right? I'm an old school guy. Maybe it's too complicated. I have to download an app. I have to remember this something called private key. I have to teach my guys how to use it. And then my other problem is that maybe I might have to find some place to convert it back, because my farmers in Cambodia, they're not going to take this thing called Bitcoin, right? They need Cambodian real or Cambodian currency. So I think that's a myth in a sense, because it's a hassle. If I'm, let's say, trying to launder a big chunk of money, right? In fact, maybe even let's go buy a diamond and then you walk across the border in Thailand is easier, right? So from the user point of view, if I'm going to use it for illegal activities, it's a little bit tough, right?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Hey, I'd also like to hear from the audience. While you guys are here with us, what other myths have you heard? Right. So just type it in the section below. Right. Just type in what other myths have you heard? Bitcoin myths, or we call it myths, or it might be a reality for some. But let us address those concerns, right? Let's talk about those concerns. So please put it below in the comment section, and then we'll continue, right? We'll continue with this. So I don't know if you guys can see the screen clearly. So Bitcoin is used for illegal activity. So that was a very good example that Stephen gave. I prepped some slides to have a bit of data, just so that we can quantify some of these myths, right? So EquitiesTracker, that's what we stand for, right? Data driven investment. So our answers obviously have to also be data driven, right? So we serve it up with a whole pile of data driven evidence, right? So let's see. So between 2012 to 2015, right, 9 major banks have actually been fined about $20 billion for money laundering. So if you say that, so you keep saying that Bitcoin is used for illegal activities, it's used for money laundering and all that. Banks too are being used for that, for the same illicit activities. Obviously, some banks have been caught. I mean, these are just the ones that have been caught. What about the ones who have not been caught? And those of you with the Netflix subscription, I would recommend that you watch. What was that one called? Dirty Money, right, on Netflix. And I think it's episode 3, where they do one about HSBC and the Sinaloa cartel, where HSBC essentially was used for money laundering, the banking system. And I think that's still the predominant money laundering vehicle of choice for many, right? And so Bitcoin, I mean, look, from a technical perspective, Bitcoin actually has a digital footprint. So those of you thinking you're very smart and you want to money launder with Bitcoin, that's a big no-no, because Bitcoin is the whole reason behind a blockchain is so that you can track every single transaction, right, from the beginning of when Bitcoin was born, right? So it goes all the way back. Yeah. So okay. So yeah. So look. So it was they'll find 20 billion, right? That's almost 10% of Bitcoin's current total market cap, right? So it's they'll find quite a lot of money, lah. The other perspective that I wanted to share is that if you look at so according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, they estimated that 2 to 5% of the global GDP, or roughly $800 billion to 2 trillion, is laundered each year, and most of it is in the form of cash. So there's another myth right there busted, right? I mean, if we're really looking at it, there isn't that much Bitcoin, or Bitcoin isn't worth that much for you to launder, right? So Bitcoin's market cap, that means all the Bitcoin in circulation right now is only 220 billion, right? So there isn't even enough Bitcoin in value to launder. Um, Look, this is again more right where so Chainalysis is actually a company that does a lot of analysis on the blockchain. So they have shown that a total of around 11.5 billion US dollars worth of cryptocurrency transactions last year was associated with crime activity. So they actually tracked it down. That's roughly 1.1% of the total cryptocurrency activities. So for those of you who still believe that Bitcoin or other cryptos are mainly used for money laundering, or illicit activities, look, here are the facts, here are the figures, right? So believe what you will. I mean, sometimes it's like uh, 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 it, it's I just present the facts, and you choose what to believe in.
Well, actually,
So
Andrew, the other thing about the what you mentioned, the digital footprint, right? There have been people who will hack your computer and then lock it up with a password and then hold that data for ransom. So when you pay, usually they ask for Bitcoin. Actually, that is probably one of the from the digital footprint perspective, is probably one of the worst possible thing that the scammers should do, because once that Bitcoin is transferred to the address that he's given, that can be digitally tracked, and there has been some cases where there are enforcement of agencies that actually track those addresses to wherever it's going. So the idea is to follow the money, right? So
yes,
that makes using Bitcoin for illegal activities, essentially you could be anonymous at that time, but at some point in time, they will keep tracking where that money goes and they follow the trail. And then eventually they do get caught, right?
yeah, yeah. So look, obviously, the real criminals who are, I think they're smart enough to know their way around the system lah. So
Hmm.
so for me, this is like urban legend. This is a myth that everyone still holds on to. Bitcoin, yeah, that's used for drugs and buying weapons or whatever on the dark web. Well, look, maybe when it first started, and that's what got it famous, right? But look, it's probably one of the worst forms to actually for you to do money laundering, right? Yeah. So um, let's move on to the next one, right? So again, criminals thinking that Bitcoin. Something I wanted to share. So I think 4 years ago, a pretty large and prominent crypto exchange called Bitfinex was hacked, and quite a large amount was stolen. The Bitcoin was stolen. Now, uh, it was stolen, and the Bitcoin was moved out of the exchange and it was moved into some wallets, right? Now, as Stephen mentioned earlier, those wallets are actually tracked. And right now, if you follow the right Twitter account, recently, I think a couple of weeks back, some of that money was actually moved. Some of that Bitcoin was actually moved. So, as Stephen mentioned, if you steal it, people are actually watching where the money moves to, and eventually, it's not that easy to to run away, lah. Essentially, right? Yeah. Um, okay, so I think this then moves us to the next question, right? Unless there's more, unless some of the myths that the audience wants to get clarified, please put it in the comment section below. Why would I want Bitcoin when I have cash? Steven, you wanna take this?
Well, I think the world's economy, right, uh, moves on fiat currency or cash, right? So essentially, it's very hard to actually have Bitcoin replace it, right? In the sense, but sometimes people say, well, the whole world economy runs on cash. So why should I, but it is akin to saying that why should we need gold if I have cash, right? So that kind of argument doesn't hold much strength, because there are alternative, what I call instruments, right, that are out there. So you tell that to a guy who loves gold, right? Like, for example, gold is at the all-time high of nearly touching 2,000, right? So it's just two different instruments. So that argument actually is a bit weak in a sense, right? So
Yep.
that's how we view it, right? It's like saying, oh, the whole world should only have one instrument, which is called cash. Other things just, don't stack up.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you know, if I can expand that a little bit more, why would I want Bitcoin or crypto when I have cash, or when I have the existing financial system, or I have the existing banking system? Why would I need any of that? Now, I think that there's this saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? What if you drop the basket, or something, all your eggs are gone? It's just having a diversification of assets, right? Of asset classes. Um, if you want liquid assets, you can keep your money obviously in the banking system. You can have some money in crypto or Bitcoin. You can put some money inside in more liquid assets like stocks. And stocks is probably a good one right now. The market's hot, right? And you can also have your money in other less liquid assets like real estate, right? So there's so or Stephen mentioned, you can have it in diamonds, you can have it in expensive watches that appreciate over time. It's good to kind of spread it, right? So that not all your eggs are in one basket. I think that's it. Yeah, Daniel says for hedging. Yeah, look, obviously it's a hedge, right? Obviously, that there's also a lot of talks right now, and there's a guy named Robert Kiyosaki. I think it's pretty famous household name. He wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um, in 2017, he did not understand what Bitcoin was. He didn't acknowledge it. But I think he has come to understand what it is now. So he actually has his own podcast, and he has his own a radio show, well, kind of podcast on YouTube, where now he's telling everyone to buy gold, buy Bitcoin, and buy silver, because it is what he says is that it's a hedge against all the extra money that is being pumped into the financial system, right? So quantitative easing is another. It's a nice name to say we're going to create more money. So when you add additional money onto the money supply, um, he believes that it will devalue the currency, and obviously that money has to flow somewhere. So I assume it will flow into other asset classes, right? And one of them can be crypto. The other thing to think about is, like, we're very lucky here in Malaysia, where we have a good, strong banking system. Bank Negara is pretty solid, and we've got good regulators and regulations in place. But there are other economies that are not so lucky, right? So I'll give some examples in the slides. Like in Venezuela, when they got shut off from the world, and they were suffering hyperinflation, right? So which means day by day, their money was worth less and less, right? Eventually, to buy a cup of coffee, they got a whole wheelbarrow of cash to buy a cup of coffee. So what they did to hedge against the hyperinflation was they converted as much as they could into Bitcoin, right? It was actually less volatile than their fiat currency. The other examples I'd like to give, Zimbabwe is an interesting one. I think this one, everyone knows that this is the one where they had also hyperinflation. There was more. This was literally, again, wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread, right? Um, Something that's more recent in Greece. Remember, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years back or 7 years back, when Greece had to take austerity measures, right? And there were talks about Greece maybe leaving the EU and all that, um, they shut down their banks, right? Because they were afraid about the bank runs. They were afraid that people would just go and withdraw all their money from the bank account. So they just shut down the bank. So um, it's always good to have something liquid. There is another famous person in crypto called Andreas Antonopoulos. He himself is Greek, and his parents live in Greece. So he recalls during this time when it happened, he was actually sending Bitcoin to his parents, so that they could get access to their to money to buy, just daily supplies like bread and food and all that. So I guess it's good to keep it. Sorry, I've moved ahead of myself. Uh, to hedge your bets, like essentially, you have don't put all your eggs in one basket. The next one is kind of related to the others, that the government guarantees my money. This one is quite. Stephen, you wanna go first?
Well, actually, when the government says that they guarantee your money, but then if there is a policy, a government policy of, let's say, restricting the use of your money, right, in the banks, in the banking system, right? Uh, Obviously, sometimes it's maybe for greater good, so that there's no run on the banks. Because when that happens, like in the situation with Greece, right? But there are other times also is the government may do a policy of doing, let's print more money, right? But so therefore the what they call the other 90% of the people who work very, very hard to earn that money seem to have no control over the other side, which is if the government do decide to, let's say, print more of that currency. So as you know, if you have more supply, the chances of something, getting devalued because there's a greater pool now, that is very real. And how it translates is that in the end, you might end up having your hard-earned money lose its value, and you cannot do anything about it. And I think that's where the greatest fear for most citizens in some countries where their currency has been fluctuating a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the more recent ones, I think in Turkey recently, they just jacked up their overnight rates, because they the Turkish lira, I think, was in a free fall, and
Yes.
so
Yeah.
they jacked up their overnight rates to kind of prop it up. So yeah, so back to look, I think most governments do guarantee up to a certain amount. So as in, if the bank ever goes belly up, then you still get your money back. Like, you won't lose your money. And obviously in uh, Bitcoin and other cryptos, essentially you are in charge of your money. So if you lose your password, or you lose your private keys, then you are locked up. There's no one to call. You've lost it, right? But whilst the government guarantees your money, as Stephen mentioned, uh, I mean, there's quite a few examples, right? You've got Venezuela, you've got Argentina, right? Where they were high. I mean, their economy, like, I think at that time the economy was about the same as ours, right? The same size as ours. But then the devaluation of their currency just, I mean, created a lot of pain for its citizens, right? And like the one in Greece, the story that I mentioned earlier about Andreas's parents, because he was outside of I think he was in the States at that time, so he could still send money to his parents using Bitcoin, right? Not so at least they still had money to buy food and all that. So let me move on to the next one. Oh, Bitcoin is too volatile. Stephen, what do you think? Is Bitcoin too volatile?
Actually, I heard of a retailer. I won't name, I mentioned who, they decided to actually on their e-commerce website to start accepting Bitcoin, right? So then they say, yeah, we are one of the first ones in our industry to accept Bitcoin for our products, which was on their e-commerce website. So, but the challenge for that is that yes, you can seem to be innovative and cool, but at the same time, I asked them, why are you doing that? Oh, they say, well, it's kind of cool. We are the only ones accepting Bitcoin for our goods and for our products that we sell online, right? So then only once they implemented that, they realized that, hey, it's not so easy, because today the price I got it is this much, and our selling price of that product was this much, and we got Bitcoin. Tomorrow it can go this way or it can go down, right? So which is true in a
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
volatile. But then if you look at it, has over a period of time, you will notice that uh, the volatileness or the volatility of the Bitcoin kind of like hovers back to a gentle curve, right? So that's
yeah,
where there are two sides to the story. So for those people who are accepting it, it can swing either way, right? So I always ask the companies, why are you accepting Bitcoin? I mean, what's the reason, the why that you're accepting Bitcoin in your e-commerce site, for example? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think, look, I tend to agree with Stephen. I think, yeah, the price of Bitcoin does fluctuate, and it makes it difficult for an e-commerce site to to accept a volatile currency. So that one can be a problem. Uh, at the same time, though, what's interesting is that it gives rise to an opportunity, right? It is an opportunity then for these payment processes to come along, and there are quite a few around now. There's one called BitPay in America, right, where
Mm.
uh, you plug it in, you make a sale online, and then the Bitcoin gets transferred to your account into BitPay, and you can then leave instructions for BitPay to either convert it at the spot rate, so whatever the cost is, convert it into US dollars and bank into your account, or you could do half and half, or 60/40, 70/30, however way you want to do it. And again, this is quite common for businesses, especially import export type businesses. They do hedges. They do buy and sell foreign currencies, because they know they always need a bit of USD to buy something or to pay for something. So I think it gives rise to as an opportunity for some of these payment processes to come into this space. So look, it's 11 years old. Yeah, it'll take a while for it to kind of for the market cap to grow large enough for it to be more stable. But for now, for the traders out there, enjoy the ride, because every time it moves up or down, someone's going to make, it's an opportunity to make money, right? Um, yeah. So the next one, um, yeah, but obviously, to counter that, though, if you look at some of the stats that we found, Bitcoin is, though it's volatile, it is less volatile, or at least we found some stocks in the S&P 500, right, that are more volatile than Bitcoin. So really, it's no, as a currency to hold value. Like I said, for those e-commerce sites, you can just have it converted directly by one of those payment processes, but it is pretty volatile. Um, oh, this one we hear a lot of, shares are better than Bitcoin, and especially so in the market right now, where you're getting some pretty crazy returns in Versa,
Mhm.
in the stock market. Stephen?
Well, actually, this one is like literally, it's sometimes in a way you're actually comparing a basket of fruits, and you're comparing your apple with your orange, right? So it's just like saying, oh, shares are better than gold. Okay, it's like we said before, it's just different asset classes and instruments. Just like, for example, there's some people who are really passionate about investing in property and real estate. And there are those who would never touch it and say, no, my thing is equities, right? But they're all just different, right? It could be that you buy a property that is probably in a very quiet neighborhood, and overnight that neighborhood became very hot. Just like, let's say, maybe 20 years ago when you bought a small little shop lot in, let's say, Bangsa, right? And then it turned out to be the hottest place for nightlife, and your property just went appreciate a lot, right? Similarly, if you got into gold, right? If you got into it, let's say 1 month ago, maybe you would be in a very happy place, right? But if you had got into it maybe when it was at the low 1,000 rate, right? So it's all comparative, but then you cannot say that one asset class is better than the other. It's just depending on your number one, your investment horizon, and also your maybe your risk appetite even, right? Okay,
Yep.
or how liquid you want your asset class or your instruments to be.
Yep. Look, first and foremost, I love shares. We are EquitiesTracker, so we love shares. In fact, we dedicate 6 nights out of the 7 nights to equities, to shares. But we still leave 1 night for crypto, and that's because we believe that crypto is the up and coming. It's a new kid on the block. Eventually, there may be a blurring of the lines between what is crypto and what's a share as tokenization takes place. But for now, look, I love shares. I've got no, and as Stephen mentioned, look, it's just different asset classes, and it's up to the individual how they allocate what asset class, what percentage of asset classes within their portfolio. So yeah, I love both. Right? It's there's nothing to share. The one thing to share though is this is the interesting one, and if you had bought $100 worth of Bitcoin in 2010, right, and you just bought it, you left it in your hard drive, and you totally forgot about it. And if you happen to find that Bitcoin and you realize, oh, I had some Bitcoin back then, your $100 in 2020, in the beginning of 2020, when I think Bitcoin was around $7,000, your $100 would have turned into $9.2 million. So pretty nice. It'll be a nice surprise if you found that hard drive. Yeah. So oh, this one I hear a lot of, Stephen. Bitcoin is a scam.
This one is actually, in the early days of, especially in Asia, right, or in Malaysia, you heard of multi-level marketing, right? So then you realize that when it was introduced, literally multi-level marketing is just binary system, right? One person introduced 2, and then 2 introduced 2 more. It's actually a very good marketing scheme, right? But when people starting to use it to make fast money, and to have people give very high returns or high promised returns, right? So literally overnight, multi-level marketing became a bad word, because you hear about stories of people getting losing money because of multi-level marketing, right? So now Bitcoin seems to have that stigma, right? Because you hear that, people are using crypto as a way to scam people. So it's like saying now all MLMs are scams, right? So therefore now anything to do with crypto or Bitcoin is a scam, right? So it's based on that kind of belief, which is not correct, I say.
Yeah. Look, I hear a lot about this. Look, no doubt there are a lot of scams out there in this space because it's unregulated, right? Or in a lot of countries, it's not regulated. In Malaysia, it's actually very advanced, and we are regulated. You know, in Malaysia, there are, if you wanted to get into crypto, there are, you know, X number of 4 different types of crypto that you can purchase from 3 different regulated exchanges, or they call them digital asset exchanges in Malaysia, that's regulated by the Securities Commission. So it's fully above board, fully regulated, fully legit in Malaysia. Anything outside of the 4, which is Bitcoin, Litecoin now has been approved, Ethereum, and XRP. Right. So anything outside of the 4 are not sold on the regulated exchanges in Malaysia. So look, I think regulation is a good thing. So anything outside of that, just be careful. Think about it before you do anything. Obviously, right? Um, so I'll just move on. Bitcoin is a yeah. These are just some examples of scams that have actually happened. Is a pretty large scam, right? And now, so yeah, Bitcoin is peer to peer. There's no leader, right? So it'll be quite difficult to be a scam, right? To be a scam, you kind of need, you need someone on the top, right? Oh, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme. I hear that. I hear that a lot, right? The whole definition of Ponzi is you kind of need someone right on top, lah. But in Bitcoin, there is no one person right on top. There's nobody, right? It's a peer to peer network.
So I think in a sense, it's kind of like guilty by association.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Uh, oh, okay. This one is one of the most common ones that I've heard. Oh, Bitcoin. It's so easily hacked. Stephen, over to you.
Well, this one I would say to explain it would be kind of like, okay, let's say the bank gave you an ATM card, right? And you wrote your PIN number at the back of the card, and then you go to the local restaurant and you leave the card on the table, right? Of course, your money will get stolen, right? So similarly, most of the time, if you hear stories about people losing money or losing crypto or losing Bitcoin, chances are it's because they were careless with their wallets, maybe with their private key, right? And basically, that is your PIN in a sense, right? So when you tell other people about your PIN number, which in the case of Bitcoin is your private key, it will get hacked, right? So, but if you look at it in greater detail, right, the hacking occurs either in the wallet or maybe in your exchange account, right? But if you look at it from the technical point of view, the Bitcoin network, right, didn't get hacked. So similarly, if you compare it to, let's say, your bank account, the bank may not have gotten hacked. It's just that because you were careless with your maybe your OTP code, you gave it to somebody, or you told somebody your PIN number, and subsequently they stole your ATM card. So that's how you lose your money. So in the 11 years that Bitcoin has been around, the Bitcoin network has still, until today, been intact and not been hacked.
Yep. So, look, I think to explain this, it may get slightly technical, but when when a lot of people talk about the hacking, it usually isn't Bitcoin that gets hacked, as Stephen mentioned, right? It is actually the exchange may have gotten hacked, where you placed it, or as Stephen said, you may have freely given out your device, right, which contains your private key, and then people steal it from there. One of the most common hacks that you can have the most secure system in the world, but there's this thing that hackers call social engineering or phishing attacks, where they can make a website look very similar to, say, Maybank to you, right? and it might be instead of a Maybank to you, it's some symbol that makes two symbols make it look a, it's just or two V's, right, that make it look like a W, whatever it is. They will trick you into thinking that you're logging onto the original site when you're not, right? Now, also just going back to the security of blockchains. Now, there are so many different blockchains out there. Bitcoin is by far the most secure blockchain there is out there, full stop, right? There isn't another one that comes close. I mean, the next closest one would probably be Ethereum, right? But so when I say the most secure, it means the most number of people around the world that have dedicated their hashing power. Now, what's hashing power? Uh, it, I'm sure the audience has heard of this thing called Bitcoin mining, right? So Bitcoin mining actually costs you money. First, you got to buy the mining rig, right? Then you have to obviously got to pay your duties and whatnot. You got to set it up, and when you turn it on, it's like a 1.5 to 2 horsepower aircon that you're running nonstop 24/7. You gotta run up a really really high bill, right? So now, part of securing a network, like in Bitcoin's case, is cost. So if someone really wanted to hack the Bitcoin blockchain, it's a matter of cost. Does the cost justify the end result, right? So if it's going to cost me so much to hack the Bitcoin network, if how else can I redeploy this capital, right? This bunch of money. Would I be better off if I just use the same money to buy Bitcoin, or would it be better if I use this money to buy some mining machines and do some mining myself and actually help secure the network further? So it almost incentivizes. So in economics, this is called game theory, right? It almost incentivizes the hacker to think twice. Hey, why am I spending so much money to try and hack it? Well, I might as well comply with its rules to make me some money, right? So I think that's quite important to understand, and it's quite a difficult topic to understand, but by far Bitcoin has the most secure network. Now, when it was released in 2009, where you could still mine Bitcoin with your laptop, right, on your PC, it may not have been that secure then. But over the years, I mean, we're 11 years in now, and the hash rates just keep going up. The hash rates means more and more people are plowing in resources, money, right, money to secure this network. Now, it's got to be worth something, right? The security alone is worth it. So that's my take on it. So it's easily hacked. Maybe in the early days it may have been. There are a lot of new blockchains that have come out, like they forked into Bitcoin Gold and all that. And you would have heard, that there are reports of this, what's known as a 51% attack, where it actually is not that expensive to hack Bitcoin Gold. So what they did was they can actually purchase, you can purchase hashing power to rewrite history. If you know, you rewrite history and all the transactions, and you transfer all the money back to you, right? So there have been blockchains out there, like Bitcoin Gold and all that have had its history rewritten, or it's had the 51% attack because it wasn't expensive enough. It was cheap enough for the hacker to just hack it. But mind you, Bitcoin is way too expensive for any to actually hack. And it's been done in such a way where it just incentivizes you. Look, I might as well comply the rules and make some money and contribute to the hashing power and make it more secure. That's my my take on it. Oh, this one's another all-time favorite. Bitcoin is bad for the environment. Stephen, over to you.
Well, actually, in the early days when they were using raw power of CPUs, it was really using up a lot of energy. But I think over time, right, if you look at the technology of mining equipment, which are essentially computers optimized for doing mathematical calculations, right? So over time, actually, Bitcoin became more and more efficient because of this, the technology of using math processors and all that, and they became much and much cheaper to run a mining rate versus in the early days where they were using pure compute power, right? But then in the whole scheme of things, in fact, this chart is good that you have shown here. Is basically, if you compare it to other forms of like gold, minting, and also even our banking system, right? You look at the cost of running those on a timeline, compare that against the Bitcoin mining. Actually, it's a mismatch. It's a Bitcoin mining is a small fraction of all the other asset class if you compare it that way, right? So this is actually a very good chart that you have shown here, right? Like gold mining, actually the combined global gold mining industry probably, use up that high of energy of nearly 500,000. What is that? Joule. J is joules. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think yeah. So this table's up there so that you can actually see. And I think I just want to maybe add a bit of a perspective because I just had this conversation this afternoon with a friend of mine in New York, and he's a bit of an environmentalist. And obviously we were talking about Bitcoin, and I said, oh look, I'm busting myths tonight, and he says look, Bitcoin's okay, but I'm not so comfortable with the carbon footprint of Bitcoin. And I said, okay, thank you for bringing it up. Let's talk about it, right? I said, first of all, I mean, look, you've read a lot of reports that the combined energy usage of Bitcoin mining, is what powers a small country in Eastern Europe or whatever. Now, look, I think if you're looking at it purely from that perspective, that or that context, you're like, oh wow, powering a whole country, that's insane. Now, but if you, for example, look at the banking system, right? The banking system, they too consume energy, right? Banking systems will have to have the aircon on, right, during office hours. Let's look at HSBC, one of the global banks alone, right? How many branches do they have? How many buildings do they have around the world? How much is the cooling, the heating, the lighting, right? And the energy consumption. What about their data centers? They also have computers that they need to power. What about, and if you look at the banking system in a greater context, what about the maintenance of money? And I'm talking about M0, I'm talking about the coins, and I'm talking about the paper currency, fiat currency, the paper notes. You have to print them. So there's the paper, the ink, right? The printing machines, the armored vehicles that will have to transport it. I think if you put that into perspective, look, it's gonna cost. It won't be cheap,
It costs money to print money.
Cost money to print money, exactly.
Yeah.
And what
That's the
about
reason why that's the reason why things like e-wallets make sense, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's right.
Because you
That's
are
right.
actually, imagine, let's say in Malaysia, instead of printing cash, we can decide, okay, let's the central bank now will just mint or digitally print ringgit, right? And
Yeah,
then send it out through all the wallet companies,
yeah, yeah,
right? So that actually in itself would save a tremendous amount, right?
yeah. And what about when there's always every time Chinese New Year comes along, hey, I want the new notes. I don't want I always want the new crispy new notes. Then what about the old notes, the rumple, about the moldy ones? There's still the process of destruction of the old notes, right? And the replacement one. So whilst you got to print and mint coins and all that, you also need to destroy the old ones, right? You got to melt down the old coins, and then you got to burn the old notes, right? So all that requires energy. So to say that the Bitcoin it's bad for the environment. Well, look, so is everything else, right? Welcome to industrialization. Yeah. And look, this table is just to show that look, Bitcoin's not that bad, lah. Right? It's not that bad, right? Obviously, yeah. So this is so no one uses Bitcoin. This is another thing. Stephen, you wanna
Well, actually, it's just like early adoption, right? In the beginning, nobody heard of it. It's akin to when Apple first started as a company, right?
yeah.
Right? If you were fortunate enough to meet Steve Jobs when he was trying to build his company in a garage, right? Chances are he'll say, "I'm gonna sell you a share in my company. This company is named after a fruit. Will you buy it for 10 cents?" Maybe you would not, and probably half of the people he meets won't even want to buy it, right?
Yeah.
But if he had launched a computer, maybe more people will buy it, right? Then later, when he invented something called an iPod, right? He might be able to convince even more people. Now, so that's how the projection of the when it's something new. So similarly, I think Bitcoin being a 11-year-old technically company, that's how it's growing, right? And I think the chart will show that today, per day, we're doing 312,000 transactions, right, of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
of various values, right?
Yep. That's right. Yeah. So look, this chart actually shows this one here shows the number of transactions, Bitcoin transactions. You can see that it is on an uptrend, right? So which means more and more people are using it. This one, just tells you that each day there's over 300,000 transactions conducted globally. Look, it's probably small in terms of total transactions globally, but look, it's growing. You can look at the graph and it's growing, right? Look, we're almost at 9 o'clock, and I think we've got quite a few more myths. So we might not be able to get through the entire chart. So I might, go through a few quickly. I can't buy anything with Bitcoin. Look, that's not true. You can even book airline tickets with Bitcoin. There's a wallet you can download for your phone, where you can top up. You can top up your prepaid credit with Bitcoin, with Satoshis. You can book. What do you call? You can book a flight. You can book hotel rooms and pay with Bitcoin. Coinbase Commerce, powers which can plug into Shopify and WordPress. Has over 8,000 merchants. So look, there's an underlying and growing trend, which many people are ignoring, right? But the trend is clear. That, and look, the trend of using e-wallets, like in Malaysia, right? We use our GrabPay, or we use our Touch and Go wallet to pay rather than count money and coins and all that. Bitcoin has no value. I'll just quickly go through, because we're 2 minutes from 9 o'clock. Bitcoin has no value. So we explore. I mean, what is value? I mean, there's value is what people give it, right? It's supply and demand. Bitcoin is too slow. That one is true. I mean, in a sense that it takes close to an hour for Bitcoin to actually be written deep enough into the block. So each block is 10 minutes. Most applications will require 6 block confirmations, so that your block is deep enough and is then it's confirmed. So look, yeah, it's kind of slow right now, but there are other projects out there, like the Lightning Network, which is almost close to instant. So Bitcoin needs a leader. That's another one. That's interesting. Oh, here's an interesting. Ethereum is better than Bitcoin. Some people I talk to, you are in crypto, huh? Yeah. Ethereum is better than Bitcoin, huh? It's like saying the sink is better than the chair. I mean, it depends what you want to do, lah. Wash your hands, then use the sink, right? You want to sit down, use the chair. It's kind of
Yes.
yeah. Um, look, there are a lot of myths out there, lah. Look, there are over 5,000 coins out there. How are you sure that Bitcoin will be around in 20 years? Look, to be honest, I can't. Like Stephen also don't know, right? Um, but as of now, it is, like I said, by far the most secure network there is, and I Bitcoin is usually the one that is mentioned. And if you look at a lot of the professional fund managers, when they allocate as part of their portfolio allocation, it's usually Bitcoin.
And also the fact that it has that sustained 21 million finite amount
Yes.
on the network, right? There's always going to be 21 million Bitcoins on the network. Right? I think that gives the faith to a lot of the Bitcoin investors.
Yep. Yeah. There's a question here which I'll quickly answer from SKF. How do I buy Bitcoin? Look, in Malaysia, there are 3 regulated exchanges. So use any of the 3. We've had the CEO of one of them come on our show. His name is Chu Yi, and the one that he runs is called tokenize.malaysia.com. Tokenize with a Z, tokenize.malaysia.com. And if you happen to go on there and you register for an account, put in the coupon code of tokenize ET, and you'll get. I think Chi said in the show that you get you get an extra 15 ringgit worth of the tokenized token, which you can use as part of your transaction cost. So use that. Look, I think stop others from making copies of Bitcoin. Look, there's nothing stopping others from making copies of Bitcoin. In fact, it's open source software, and others have made copies, but they're just not as successful as Bitcoin right now. Because
I think to clarify, this one is more of make copies of networks like Bitcoin network. It's not so much of making copies. That means making your own Bitcoin, right? Or making more Bitcoins, right? So
Yes.
the definition is actually more of you can use the Bitcoin network technology, the software, because it's open source.
Yeah. But where are you gonna find the exchanges that will accept this new copy of the Bitcoin, right? I mean, I can make a copy and call it the Bitcoin Andrew, right? And how am I going to find miners that will secure the network? How am I going to find exchanges that will list my coin, right? How am I going to convince people that my Bitcoin is better than the original Bitcoin, right? So there are quite a few challenges. So you can go and make a million different types of Bitcoins, but are you going to gain acceptance? So the original Bitcoin has the greatest acceptance so far of all the other Bitcoins, right? Bitcoin can never replace the banks. Yeah, look, just like the internet, has not replaced newspapers. I don't think Bitcoin is going to replace banks. I mean,
you may actually, because of the existence of Bitcoin, change the way banks operate, right? So that can happen. It's just like, for example, the newspapers of today have changed and evolved because of the internet, right? So similarly, I think that will happen also because of the existence of Bitcoin or Bitcoin networks. Now the banks will have to maybe pivot their business in a slightly different way, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting that I think there was an announcement. I think I spoke about it last week. In America now, banks are looking into safekeeping your Bitcoin for you. So what Stephen just mentioned, the nature of banks may change, right? So maybe you don't trust yourself holding, a few $1 million worth of Bitcoin. All right, you outsource the security of that to the bank.
Like custodian services, right?
Correct. Yep.
So it's like banks providing you a safe deposit box for your Bitcoins, right?
Yeah. So next time when you log into Maybank, you got your ringgit balance, you might have a USD balance, and you got your Bitcoin balance, right? And you can transfer it within different accounts, right? That could be the experience in future. Who knows? Um, I'm too busy for Bitcoin. Look, that one I cannot help you lah. that one. I
Make friends with somebody who's good with Bitcoin, so then you won't go wrong.
Call Steven. Steven can help you. Yeah. Look, so what's next? Look, Bitcoin and crypto. More and more retail investors are coming in, right? You've got the Swiss exchange offering crypto trading, right? There's an app in America called the Cash app, right? It's very famous. Look, just like we're used to our Grab Pay and our Touch and Go, they have this in America. There's Cash app. China have got the WeChat. In America, there's this thing called Venmo as well, right? It's just sending each other money. Cash app. I don't know if it's here. Oh, sorry. I think it's in one of the slides later on. But so this one, right? JP Morgan extends banking services to Bitcoin exchanges. US banks given regulatory green light to safekeep cryptocurrencies, as I mentioned before. There you go. That's the one. So this Cash app, which is owned by, which is Square, and Square is listed on Nasdaq. The CEO is actually Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey is also the CEO of Twitter, right? There was a 600% increase in their quarterly revenue just from Bitcoin alone, right? So they made a total of 875 million, so 6 times the amount in the same period last year. So there is growing demand, right? Bitcoin is gaining credibility in the financial community, right? You've got all these solid financial institutions that are now getting into the game. Bakkt, for those who don't know, Bakkt is owned by ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange, who happens to also own the New York Stock Exchange, right? So they are getting in on the game, right? Fidelity, Square, I mentioned earlier, right? Cambridge Associates. Again, I think this is the last slide. Yeah, this is the last slide. Grayscale. So for financial institutions, they're not, especially the investments as an investment, they're actually not allowed to purchase Bitcoin per se, but they can purchase securities, so they can purchase a share. So there's a company called Grayscale in America, and they've listed this on the OTC market, right? And so what it is essentially it's like an ETF. They just take in money and then they buy the underlying asset, which is Bitcoin, and then they issue shares, and those shares can be traded on the OTC market. And so look at the growth of how much they're managing.
Wow.
The assets under management growth accumulative is 95,000%. So and right now assets under management is 2.2 billion, right? So it's huge and it's growing, and that's the only way that these funds are able to get into Bitcoin. So like when the fund manager like Paul Tudor Jones, for example, says that he's allocated 2% of his fund into Bitcoin, what he means is that he's bought this GBTC, which is the shares, right, which holds the underlying Bitcoin, because he's not allowed to buy the Bitcoin itself. So look, we're 9 minutes over. Stephen, any final words?
Well, I think for those who are starting to learn about Bitcoin, whenever you hear sweeping statements or myths about Bitcoin, uh, take it, but try to do some searching and find out more information about those myths. And chances are those myths are sometimes not so correct, right? So don't take it for face value that, oh, Bitcoin is a scam. So most of these myths actually, if you dive deeper in learning it, you will probably find that they are not so correct, right? So I guess the whole idea is just like you want to find out about various new asset classes like ETFs and things like that. The whole idea is go to people who know and give you data and give you the knowledge, and then you are more informed, right? So rather than follow maybe 90% of people who believe until today that if you're in Bitcoin, you're a shady character who, I shouldn't get near you, right? So I still hang out with Andrew, even though I know he's a shady character, right? So the whole principle is actually learning more about this asset class called Bitcoin, right? Rather than hear what's out there, the rumors, the maybe half truths about this asset class, right? So that's
Yeah.
my take on it.
Thank you, thank you. So look, to add to what Steven says, I think closing comments are that look, um, get educated, right? Don't buy first. Get educated, understand what it is that you're getting into, because there is some volatility. I mean, there's also volatility in shares, but when you know what you're buying into, even though there is volatility, you can still sleep at night, right? But if you point to something because I don't know, your gardener told you to buy it, and you bought it, then you start to worry if the thing dips 4 or 5%, or yeah. So get educated, understand what it is you're getting into. I hope the slides and the information provided is data driven enough that it shows you where the trends are. And just to make an announcement. I know we call this crypto night. Every Thursday night is crypto night, and so far we've only talked about crypto. We're gonna expand. We're looking into expanding the scope into tech trends, right? Essentially, these are disruptive, innovative technologies that will, blow a lot of the competition out of the water, in the sense that it comes in, and it just the current incumbents, it totally disrupts the way they do things, right? So it's like when you introduce the car to a horse and cart industry. So what's going to happen to all the cart makers, and what about the horse breeders and all that? It totally destroys their business model. So that will be the focus. And you see shares like Tesla, for example, right? These are innovative disruptions, right? These are very innovative disruptions. And look, obviously, Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain, it's quite an innovative disruptor, right? And so moving forward, we would like to focus and expand the scope of Thursday nights to include that, so that for those of you who are geeks like myself, and you like to find out a little bit more about what's happening, and what's happening out there, and what can be life changing. It literally is life changing. Can you imagine like the combination of a smartphone and 4G technology? It has totally transformed the way we live our lives today, right? Now you can still have a smartphone, but no 4G technology. It will not transform the way you live. But once the 4G came in and combined with the mobile phone, it just transformed the way we live our lives, right? Similarly, when 5G comes in, it's going to transform it even further, right? Some don't believe that 5G is a big deal, but two of the largest economies in the world are about to go to war over 5G technology. So I think it's huge. It's going to have massive impact. So these are the topics that we will look to talk about as we move as we move forward. So I look forward to you guys coming back. And Stephen, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to join us on this session. Tonight was a bit of a fun session. Yeah, tonight was a bit of a fun session. I messaged Stephen already yesterday. I said, hey, Stephen, let's have some fun tomorrow night on a session where we just poke holes in all these myths and because Stephen's a veteran himself and he's heard this, all these statements so many times, right? Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for joining us tonight. To all the audience, thank you for staying right to the end, even though it's past my time. Hope to see you next week as we drive new content. Next week, we have a guest from Sentiment, where we will get deep into the on-chain data analysis on what's happening in crypto. So while we get more and more information, on the wider tech trends that's happening around the world. Okay, thank you and have a good night. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks to the guys. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a good night.
Thanks.